Hi everyone, this is Vivian. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about calligraphy flourishing. For a lot of people, when they first want to learn calligraphy, it's because they see beautiful flourishes on the Instagram or on Pinterest. So today I'm going to show you some tips and tricks on how to add flourishing to your calligraphy. So an easy way to start practicing flourishing is to start with descender letters. So the letters with descenders will be G, J, P, Y, and Q. And if you're doing a Z this way, that would also be. And sometimes you can also do some flourish with F, depending on the context. So I'm going to show you 4 different shapes of loops that you can combine them or use them just by themselves to create flourishes. The first one you're probably already doing is just a simple swash. So that would be something like this. And that, by that I mean if you have a G, you're probably already doing something like that. So this section is pretty much that swash. So you're most likely already doing this in your lettering. And then the second one is like a telephone coil loop. So that's another variation you can add onto it. And then the third type is what I call an infinity loop. Some people also call this like a figure 8 loop. Essentially, it's just 2 loops that are going opposite direction. And then the fourth type is what I call a pretzel loop. So it's pretty much just 2 loops, but then you're overlapping them only partially. So here are the 4 types that we're going to combine into creating more flourishes. So here I have a few examples of how you can combine the loops I just showed you. This first one is just a simple swash, and then these 2 are pretty much a loop, a single telephone loop plus a swash. Whether you are creating actually that additional loop or not, changes the look. And then this one is the pretzel loop that I just talked about. And here is the pretzel loop without a swash. And then you can also swash to the left. And then here is a not quite finished pretzel, and then here is a pretzel plus a swash, and then here is another pretzel with swash. If you just change the way the loops overlap, they can look dramatically different. So this one and this one are essentially the same, they just kind of loop differently. And here we have the infinity loop, and then a combination of all of the loops that I just talked about. So here's what it will look like with the G. Pretty neat, huh? So the same thing would be for Y. And then also, obviously, this could be a J. And it could be a P. Q is a little trickier because Q you will have to have the curve mirrored. Now let's move on to the ascender loop. Ascender loop is slightly trickier because if you're doing, say if you're writing a D, if you normally write, you might finish, this one might be 1 stroke. So now you have to break up the upstroke into 2. So you would do downstroke and finish this part, and then depending, you have to think ahead what kind of swash you want to either start here or start midway. But still, these are pretty much the combination of the 4 different loops I just showed you. The swash, the telephone coil, the infinity loop, and then the pretzel. So here are just a combination of just, adding pretzels to a swash, shape the pretzel differently, changing the size, or changing the direction of your telephone coil. And of course, you can also vary the 2 wings of the pretzels to make them more dynamic. And then there's a unique letter that also can do a lot of flourishing is the letter T, because we have a thing called a crossbar. So with a crossbar, you can also do the simple swash, or you can do a simple loop. And of course, you can try to do an infinity loop, or you can add a pretzel, upside down pretzel at the end. So that's what you can do with the letter T. There might not be that much you can do in the beginning of the word, but you can always just add a simple entrance swash to it. But then a lot of time you will have words that has ascender or descender, then you can already do a loop. And another place is the end of the word. So say if you have end of word with N, you can always add another swash to the end, or make a nice high loop, or something more tricky like this. You can do a little pretzel. So I've chose 6 words that has some ascenders and descenders that we can start practicing the flourish. First one is charming. Obviously we can do something with the ascender of H and descender of G. And first I would just write out how I normally would write these words without any flourish. So now we know on the left side we have all this empty space we can fill in with our flourish, and then maybe we can do something on the top with our flourish with the H as well. So we can do it this way. But actually I want it to be even more filling to the left. So let's see. We can do and if I need to, I think it's okay to turn your paper to finish your loop if that gives you a more smooth hand. And then with the H, I'm going to break up how the C and the H connect. So a C will connect here, and then the H will start higher up here. And then from here, I will add that loop here. So now it's a simple way to add 2 nice loop and swash onto the word charming. And next we have the word delight. So with delight, D has an ascender, so that's good. We can, the first word we can do something swashy. Swashy, is that a word? And then there's a G, and then there's T. We can do maybe even something well, or not. I'm going to write out how just without any swash it will look like D-O-I. So that's without any swash. And let's see, we can definitely, there's a lot of ascender going on already, so we don't really need to fill up too much space. There is space in both the left and right, so I want a flourish that can both swash something to the left and then something to the right. So I probably would just do this. That kind of fills up both left and right empty spaces. And since D is in the beginning of the word, I can also add something here. Maybe change the angle a little bit. I'm not going to do anything with the H. I'm just going to extend the swash of the crossbar of T. So that's one way you can do the word delight. And then next we have the word brave. Brave, there's no descender in this one, so we just have to make the B prettier. If normally I would write B-R-A. That would be a simple brave. But since I want to add make it just a little more fancier, dress it up a little bit, so I'll do a B. And that's when I can add an E. That would just be slightly, just a little bit fancier. And there's nothing we can do in the middle. You can, if you really want to add flourish at the bottom of this word, you could do an E. And then we have the word joyful. Joyful is, we have the J and the Y and then F. They all have descenders. So let's see what we can do. So that's the word joyful. So if I want to add a loop here, something, it could be messy, so I don't want to be too crazy. Maybe just something simple like that. because there's already all these descender, I don't want to make things too complicated. You could make it add another pretzel to it. It's up to you. Next one, we have the word thriving. Thriving, there's a nice T, I can do a nice crossbar and then an H and then a G at the end, so that's should be pretty interesting. So this is without any flourish. So whenever you see TH, a lot of time you will see TH being combined into the crossbar, turning to the loop of the H. That's one way to do it. So that's one way to do it. I can do a nice swash of the crossbar, and since I have all these space I want to fill, I would do. So there's a couple ways you can write the word thriving, and the last word I have the word optimistic. So now I can do a P definitely, and I think P is the only descender here, so I definitely have to utilize the descender of the P. So without any flourish, it would be optimistic. Okay, so I kind of already like how these 2T crossbar works. I don't need to make it too crazy. I mean, you could if you want, and I just need to work on the descender of the P. So let's fill up this space. So let's give it a nice pretzel. So one more final tip is when you create the loops and then the swashes, try to make it not all the same size. And by that I mean when you're doing loop, try not to make them so uniform that they actually look like telephone coils. But try to have a varies in size. You see how that and that this already right away feels there's more energy in this loop than this one. You can do the same thing with the infinity loop by making one side bigger than the other. It's supposed to be a very balanced infinity loop, and the variation in size makes it just more interesting. And also with the pretzel shape, you can also make one ear bigger than the other. The variation in the loop and the size makes your calligraphy a little more natural and flowy, and just spice up your composition a little bit. So like I said earlier, it really does take some practice to get comfortable in writing swashes. So just have fun and try out using these 4 shapes that I mentioned: the swash, the coil, and then the infinity loop, and then the pretzel. And if you found these tips helpful, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribe. I'll see you next time. Bye!